opens in the thin, uneasy calm of a mountain town where isolation sharpens every glance and rumor carries weight. Elena, the schoolteacher, has learned to live quietly, keeping her head down. Her lessons gentle, and her past buried far from the children she teaches, and the small community that barely knows her beyond the classroom. Her loneliness isn't loud. It sits in the pauses between words, in the way she walks home alone, in how she never lets herself grow close to anyone. That fragile balance shatters the moment she sees her ex step off his horse at the edge of town. Time folds in on itself as memory rushes back his charm that once fooled her, the private cruelty that followed, the careful escape that cost her everything familiar. Fear grips her, not as panic, but as certainty. He has found her, and he has not come to apologize. Alina knows the town will not protect her. People like him know how to smile and speak, how to turn doubt into a weapon. With no family, no allies, and nowhere left to hide, she does the unthinkable. She seeks out Caleb, the mountain man everyone keeps at a distance. He stands apart from the town, broad-shouldered, quiet, and rumored to be dangerous, not because he is cruel, but because he refuses to explain himself. When Elena approaches him, her voice barely carries, as she whispers, "Help me. My ex is here." Caleb doesn't ask questions. He doesn't demand proof. Something in her fear reaches a place in him long sealed shut. His eyes harden, his posture shifts, and with that silent movement, the story changes direction. In choosing to believe her without hesitation, Caleb draws an invisible line between Alina and the man who once controlled her life. The town senses it, the danger senses it, and Alina feels it most of all for the first time since her escape. Someone has chosen to stand between her and fear. Not because they were asked to, but because they refused to look away. Deepens the tension as Caleb's quiet decision turns into deliberate action, shifting Elena's fate from fear to guarded hope. Without making a spectacle, Caleb positions himself unmistakably between Elena and her ex, walking her from the schoolhouse, standing close enough that his presence cannot be ignored, his silence louder than any threat. The town begins to watch, sensing an unspoken challenge in the air. Elena's ex, used to control through charm and intimidation, tests the boundary with smiles that don't reach his eyes and words carefully chosen to sound harmless. Caleb answers, none of it. Instead, he offers Alina something she never expected: refuge. His mountain cabin, known only through rumor, lies far beyond the reach of gossip and easy access, a place where the land itself demands honesty. Elena hesitates, torn between fear of being followed and fear of trusting a man she barely knows. Yet when she looks at Caleb, she sees not possession, but restraint, someone offering protection without demanding gratitude or submission. The journey into the mountains becomes a passage out of her old life, each mile stripping away the town's noise and her own doubts. The cabin is simple, sturdy, and warm, reflecting the man who built it. Nothing wasted, nothing false. Caleb lays down clear rules, meant to give her dignity, not control. She is free to leave, free to speak, free to rest. That clarity unsettles Alina more than kindness ever did. Accustomed to love that came with conditions, she struggles to understand a safety that asks nothing in return. At night, the mountain winds howl like echoes of her past, but Caleb remains a steady presence, sleeping lightly, listening for danger she cannot see. Though they speak little, a fragile trust begins to take root in shared silence, meals eaten across a wooden table, firelight flickering over old scars on Caleb's hands, and the growing realization that protection can be gentle without being weak. By the end of part 2, Alina understands that Caleb is not hiding her away. He is giving her space to breathe, to exist without fear. And for the first time, she wonders if the mountain man standing guard outside her door is not just a shield but the beginning of something that could heal them both. Unfolds in the slow, deliberate rhythm of mountain life, where time is measured by daylight and weather rather than fear. Days pass in quiet routine, and Alina begins to understand that Caleb's cabin is not a place of hiding, but of healing. He rises before dawn to tend chores she never sees completed, leaving behind only the results: fresh water drawn, wood stacked neatly, a warm meal waiting, without explanation. His care is steady and wordless, allowing Alina to regain control over her own space and choices. In the stillness, her body starts to unlearn the constant tension she once lived with. She sleeps through the night, startled by how unfamiliar peace feels. As the silence stretches, Alina notices details she might have missed before. The way Caleb steps softly despite his size, the discipline in his movements, the scars that hint at a past shaped by loss and restraint. When they do speak, it is simple and honest, no probing questions, no forced confessions. Yet those small exchanges carry weight, revealing shared loneliness and unspoken understanding. Alina begins to help around the cabin, teaching lessons to imaginary students, while Caleb listens from outside, pretending not to. Laughter, quiet and surprising, slips into their days, catching them both off guard. With each shared moment, gratitude shifts into admiration, and admiration into a fragile affection Alina tries not to name. She realizes that what unsettles her most is not the danger she fled, but the safety she has found, a safety that asks her to trust again. One evening, as the fire burns low, Alina thanks Caleb for everything he has done. He answers simply that no one should live in fear, then falls silent, as if the words cost him more than he will admit. In that pause, Alina senses the weight he carries, a man who protects others because he believes himself undeserving of comfort. By the end of part 3, the mountain no longer feels like an escape. It feels like a boundary between who Alina was and who she might become. And she knows that crossing that boundary will mean acknowledging the growing bond between her and the man who offered her shelter without ever asking for her heart. Shatters the fragile peace of the mountains as the past refuses to stay buried. Rumors drift upward from town like smoke on the wind, whispers of Elena's ex asking questions, offering smiles that carry threats beneath them. Caleb senses the shift before Alina hears a word. His vigilance sharpens, his quiet routines turning more watchful, more controlled. When the ex finally appears on the mountain trail, his presence feels like a violation of the land itself. He speaks smoothly, pretending concern, pretending reason, but his eyes track Alina with the same old ownership. Caleb steps forward without hesitation, placing himself squarely between them. This time, Alina notices something new in him, not anger, but resolve shaped by experience. The confrontation is tense and restrained, each word measured like a drawn blade. The ex provokes, taunts, hints at Caleb's isolation and Elena's supposed weakness, expecting a violent reaction he can exploit. Instead, Caleb remains still, refusing to give him power. Yet the encounter leaves its mark. Alina sees the scars on Caleb's past more clearly now, not just on his body, but in a way his jaw tightens, how he breathes through memories he never speaks aloud. Later, she learns the truth in fragments. Caleb once acted too quickly to protect someone he loved, and the cost of that choice drove him into solitude. Fear grips Alina, not of Caleb, but for him. She realizes that protecting her risks reopening wounds he worked years to seal. When the ex retreats with a promise to return, the danger feels closer than ever. That night, the wind howls harder, and sleep refuses to come. Alina understands that hiding is no longer enough. Safety will require confrontation, courage, and choice. She faces the reality that Caleb is standing at a crossroads between the man he used to be and the man he has become, and that her presence may force him to fight battles he never wanted again. Part 4 ends with Alina making a silent vow. She will not let someone else bleed for her freedom without finding the strength to stand beside him, no longer as someone being protected, but as someone ready to face the past head-on. Drives the story into its most dangerous turning point, where fear, courage, and hard-earned strength collide. Believing Caleb has gone down to town for supplies, Alina finds herself alone when her ex returns, this time without pretense. He corners her near the cabin, his voice low and familiar, reminding her of the woman she used to be, afraid, uncertain, easily controlled. But the mountain has changed her. The quiet days, the safety, and the respect Caleb showed her have rebuilt something inside Alina that her ex never understood. She does not run. She speaks firmly, naming the truth of what he did and refusing to carry his power any longer. Enraged by her resistance, he threatens to drag her back, certain no one will hear. What he doesn't know is that Caleb never truly leaves the mountain unguarded. When Caleb returns and sees the danger, he doesn't charge in blindly. He positions himself, reads the terrain, and uses restraint rather than rage. The confrontation that follows is not a brutal brawl but a controlled exposure of the excess cruelty. Caleb forces him to choose between leaving or revealing himself as the man Alina described. When townsfolk arrive, drawn by earlier warnings, Caleb set in place. The ex's mask finally slips. His lies unravel, and the charm he relied on turns useless under the weight of witnesses and truth. Alina steps forward then, no longer silent, and speaks for herself. Her voice does not shake. By choosing to tell her story openly, She takes back the power she once surrendered. The ex is driven away, his control broken not by violence but by clarity and consequence. In the aftermath, Elena trembles not from fear, but from release. Caleb, shaken by how close he came to losing control again, withdraws emotionally, convinced that his presence brings danger. Alina sees the conflict in him, and understands that saving her may have cost him more than he will admit. Part 5 ends with the immediate threat gone, but a deeper tension emerging. The fear that love itself might be the greatest risk either of them has ever taken slows the story into a quiet, aching aftermath, where freedom arrives hand in hand with uncertainty. With the danger finally gone, Elena is offered everything she once believed she needed: safety in town, support from the community, and the chance to rebuild her life without looking over her shoulder. People who once barely noticed her now speak her name with respect, as if courage has made her visible at last. Yet the more doors that open, the heavier her heart feels. The mountain cabin, once a refuge, now stands as a question she cannot ignore. Caleb grows distant, not out of coldness, but conviction. He believes his role is finished, that he was only meant to stand between Elena and harm, not remain in her life afterward. His silence returns, thicker than before, shaped by the fear that loving her will bring danger back into both their lives. Elena senses this withdrawal and understands it too well. She recognizes the familiar shape of someone choosing loneliness to protect others. Faced with a choice she never thought she would have the freedom to make, Elena must decide whether to accept a safe, predictable future, or risk staying where her heart has quietly taken root. She walks the town one last time, seeing it clearly now, not as a place of rescue, but of survival. When she returns to the mountain, she does so with intention, not desperation. She tells Caleb she is free to live on, that she is choosing to stay. The words unsettle him more than danger ever did. For the first time, the protection is mutual. Elena is no longer asking to be saved. She is offering companionship, partnership, and a future shaped by choice rather than fear. Part 6 ends in unresolved stillness, with two people standing on the edge of something fragile and powerful, knowing that love, once chosen freely, cannot be undone without loss. Becomes the emotional heart of the story, where silence finally gives way to truth. Elena's choice to stay forces Caleb to confront the belief he has carried for years, that he is only useful as a shield, never as someone worthy of love. One evening, as the fire burns low and the mountain settles into stillness, he finally speaks. His words come slowly, uneven, as if each one must be wrestled free. He tells Elena about the past he never shared, the woman he once loved the moment he stepped in to protect her, and the single violent decision that saved her but cost him everything else. His place among people, his trust in himself. Isolation became his punishment and his penance. Elena listens without interruption, understanding that this confession is not about absolution, but honesty. When he finishes, he expects her to step back, to see him as dangerous or broken. Instead, she moves closer. Elena tells him that protection without love is only half a life, and that choosing solitude does not erase pain, it only preserves it. She does not promise him safety, forever, or perfection. She offers something braver: presence. In that quiet exchange, their bond shifts from gratitude to devotion. Caleb realizes that Elena does not need him to stand in front of her anymore. She is standing beside him by choice. Their love is not loud or dramatic, but it is deliberate, built on respect, shared healing, and the understanding that both of them are still learning how to live without fear. As winter approaches, they settle into a rhythm together, sharing work, meals, and laughter that comes easier now. The mountain no longer feels like a barrier between them and the world, but a foundation. Part 7 ends with a simple, powerful truth, finally spoken aloud, not as a declaration meant to convince, but as a certainty meant to be lived. They are no longer alone, and they are no longer running. Closes the story with quiet permanence, showing how love endures not through grand gestures, but through shared days and chosen futures. Seasons turn on the mountain, and with each change, Elena and Caleb build a life that feels both simple and profound. Elena returns to teaching, traveling down to town each morning, and back up the trail each evening, carrying knowledge to children and bringing stories home. The town no longer whispers about the mountain man and the lonely teacher. It accepts them as they are, a pair defined not by past fear, but by steady presence. Caleb, no longer hiding from connection, begins to shape his land with intention, expanding the cabin, planting, building not just for survival, but for belonging. Their love grows in quiet moments. Shared meals, repaired fences, evenings by the fire where silence is no longer heavy but comforting. Alina learns that home is not a place free from hardship, but one where fear has no authority. Caleb learns that standing between danger and love does not require losing himself. Together, they face challenges as partners, not protectors, and protected. When winter settles over the mountains again, it feels different. Less like isolation, more like shelter. The past, that once defined them, fades into memory, no longer sharp enough to wound. In the final scene, Alina looks out over the valley, from the cabin porch, realizing that the man who once stood in front of her now stands beside her, and always will. The mountain, once a refuge, has become a promise. That love chosen freely, built patiently, and guarded with respect can turn even the loneliest places into home.